In John chapter 8, John chapter 8, Jesus is having a conversation with the Jews, and he says here, John chapter 8, verse 43, he says, "Why do you not understand what I'm saying? It is because you cannot hear my word. You are of your father the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. Whenever he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies. But because I speak the truth, you do not believe me." Now, usually whenever we talk about the sin of lying, we think of what Jesus is referring to here, which is something malicious, right? I mean, he's speaking of malicious lies, lies with intent to harm or to hurt. But earlier in this chapter, he says in verse 31, he says, Jesus was saying to those Jews who had believed in him, "If you abide in my word, then you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." The issue with lying is not necessarily that it is malicious or that there's intent to harm, but that it is a violation of the truth. And this understanding really changes our attitude toward what we understand as honesty. And what I want to look at are just a few different things here about non-malicious lies that we may find ourselves participating in. Not the kind that you look at and you say, well, that's a bad lie, but the kind that we might easily excuse for ourselves. And our rejection of lying, even the kind that is maybe not malicious, not with intent to hurt, is because of our love for the truth and our desire to be like God. And we know from Hebrews chapter 6, verse 18, and plenty of other passages that it is impossible for God to lie, that he only speaks what is true, and that deceit and falsehood comes from Satan. And I think I have a theory as to why, and I'll share this with you, that lying is an attempt to change reality. Whether with positive or negative intent, it's an attempt to change what is real, right? What is true is what matches with reality. So what is false is whatever doesn't match reality. So when we speak things that are untrue, when we speak lies, we are speaking something that doesn't match reality. And I think it's because we want to change it. You don't like the way things really are, and that might be out of fear, that might be out of shame, that could be out of disappointment, sorrow, any number of negative emotions, but for whatever reason, you don't like the way things are, and instead of just letting things be the way that they are, you try to change it. Well, you can't change the way things are that are in the past or have already happened. And from this comes falsehood. And you try to speak into existence a new reality, but that's just not something you can do. There's only There's only one person who can speak things and it was so, right? But when we lie, when we speak falsehood, we're trying, whether we mean to consciously or not, we are trying to usurp the power of God that has the ability to form and to mold reality. We just don't have that kind of power. Now, the first type of lying that I think fits into this category of non-malicious is the kind for self-preservation. And the golden example is, of course, Joshua chapter 2. Joshua chapter 2. This is not, however, the only example of this in Scripture. There are several, and I won't claim that these are easy passages to handle or that I have all the answers here. But Joshua chapter 2, verses 1 through 7, we have the story of Rahab. Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men as spies secretly from Shittim, saying, "Go see the land, especially Jericho." So they went and came into the house of a harlot whose name was Rahab, and lodged there. And I might interject here, I've always wondered why that's where they went. That might tell you something about the kind of people they are. And it was told to the king of Jericho, saying, "Behold, men from the sons of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land." And the king of Jericho sent word to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who have come to you, who have entered your house, for they have come to search out all the land." But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. And she said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. Now it happened when it was time to shut the gate at dark, the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you may overtake them." But she had brought them up to the roof and concealed them in the stalks of flax, which she had laid in order on the roof. So the men pursued them on the road to Jordan, to the fords. And as soon as those who were pursuing them had gone out, they shut the gate. Now, this is probably the most famous lie in Scripture. And it saves the lives of these 2 men. And, as a result, they're going to thank her. They're going to offer her protection. She and her whole family, in Joshua chapter 6, her whole family, they're going to be saved as a result of her trust in what they've shared with her, and her faith in God. And you want to know something? There is not a single passage in all of Scripture that says anything negative about this woman or anything that she did. Now, is it acceptable then to tell a lie in order to save someone's life, in order to preserve life? I don't think this passage answers that question for us. I do think it's hard. I freely admit that. I have gone back and forth on what to do with this passage many times, but I think there's a few things to notice here. First of all, obviously it's not meant that we should read this and say that every aspect of her behavior is something we should imitate. No one would read this and say, it's okay to become a prostitute. No one has ever read it and said that that's a good takeaway here. But I recognize that her lie is not connected with her being a prostitute, but is connected rather with her faith. And you must remember here that her faith is in its earliest stages. This is the first time she, at least it seems, that she's ever encountered anyone from God's people. The first time she's ever encountered anyone from the nation of Israel. She is not portrayed here as a woman of great spirituality and faith, but as someone who is just beginning to trust in God. And so, because of the immaturity of her faith, I, again, don't know that this should be taken as as the best course of action, or as the most righteous way for her to have behaved here. Another factor here is I have never met anyone who brought up this passage who themselves was trying to justify for themselves a lie given to save someone's life. I have never heard that happen. That's not to say it doesn't happen, and I know there are countless types of stories, and you can bring up anything. Someone's going to bring up 1930s Germany, right? These questions come up. What do you do in these situations? And I don't know, but I do know that in Genesis 12, we have another story of someone who told a lie, at least giving the reason that they wanted to preserve life. Genesis chapter 12, verses 10 through 20. This is, of course, Abraham. He's not Abraham yet, but Abram and Sarai, who go into the land of Egypt. And what they say, at least, is that they're lying to preserve life. Abram says to Sarai, his wife, in verse 11, I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance, and it will be when the Egyptians see you that they will say, this is his wife, they will kill me, they will let you live. Please say you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and I may live on account of you. Now, you could debate whether this is really his rationale or not, but this is what he says. This is his stated reason. And we all know exactly how this turns out. Like, this is not, it turns out, the best way for them to have handled this situation. What would have happened if they were honest? Well, I don't know. We don't read the story of what happened when they were honest, because that wasn't the choice they made. What would have happened if Rahab was honest? Well, I don't know. We don't read the story of what would have happened, because she didn't make that choice. And yet it still falls into this same category as a level of dishonesty. When the spies go into the land, do you really think that God would let them perish in the land when they go in to spy it out, after he was the one who sent them in? Of course not. What would have happened? Well, I don't know. I don't know how God would have done it. But I don't believe that they would have died if she had decided to be honest about things. And I think she could have been honest and still done what she could to preserve. I don't know, right? But these difficult situations should not make the rule for us. This is a very difficult situation, I admit, and we sometimes fall into the trap of letting these exceptions form our understanding of the rule. This is an extreme case. This is not intended to be normative, that anytime you feel that you're in danger, you can just throw out a lie and now you've found a way to fix your problems. That's not what's intended here. Okay, enough on that. In Proverbs 26, verse 18, Proverbs chapter 26, I want to talk about another kind of maybe not non-malicious, but less malicious kind of lie. Proverbs chapter 26, verses 18 through 19. Like a madman who shoots firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, am I not joking? We culturally have a strong sense of humor. Now, you may not think that I have a strong sense of humor, but culturally, we have a strong sense of humor, just as Americans. We like to make jokes, we like to do fun things, we like to play practical jokes, and I'm pretty sure the only reason the internet's as big as it is these days anyway is to fill the world with senseless jokes that don't make any sense. But we love humor. We love jokes. We love entertainment. And there may be cases where we excuse lying or falsehood in the name of entertainment because we derive some kind of pleasure or joy out of it. Well, it was just for a laugh anyway. It was just a joke. It wasn't all that serious anyway. Why are you being so uptight, we say? Why can't you loosen up a little bit? Well, maybe the problem isn't that someone is uptight. Maybe the problem is that your sense of humor has impeded on your morality of kindness and on the rules of patience and love toward one another. I think this is a very big deal, and it seems to be worse in those who are young or immature. That I don't know. I've got some friends who I love very much, and they haven't yet figured out how to control their sense of humor. And that words spoken supposedly in jest can truly hurt people and can really seriously offend. And to claim, I was only joking, either means that what you said was a lie, or you are now lying yourself. That there was something that was meant there very often. And this is a cautionary tale. I want to remind you that Scripture does speak to these things. The third thing I want to mention, I talked fairly recently about the issues of gossip and slander. This is a tricky one because often we have positive intent. Often this happened to me very recently. I was given a piece of information by a reliable source. You know what the worst kind of source is? A reliable source. Because then you're likely to believe it. It turned out that almost every aspect of the information I'd been given by two reliable sources was completely false. And I was unaware. I don't think there was any malice, or there was no intent to harm or to hurt here, and yet the information itself, if it spread widely, could absolutely have hurt the reputations of 10 to 12 people. I mean, this was a big thing. Just because you didn't mean anything by it or you didn't mean to hurt doesn't mean that there are no consequences to those actions. And then last, if you're in Proverbs, you can turn a few pages forward to Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 4 and 5. When you make a vow to God, do not be late in paying it, for he takes no delight in fools. Pay what you vow. It is better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. Now, this sounds a lot like what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 37, where he talks about the problem with making oaths, making vows. Matthew 5:33, you've heard that the ancients were told, you shall not make false vows, but you shall fulfill your vows to the Lord. But I say to you, make no oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is the footstool of his feet, by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Nor shall you make an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black, but let your statement be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything beyond these is of the evil one. it is very easy to make a false promise unintentionally. Why? Because when you said it, you meant it. How many of us have done that? Have you done that? I've done that. I used to be very bad about this, that I would promise things which I fully meant to keep, I fully meant to do, and then you're overcome with shame that you never followed up, you never did what you forswore yourself toward. I know we tend not to think of promises as oaths, but there's really no difference in Scripture. It's unintentional. It's not meant to hurt. But what Ecclesiastes and what Jesus are warning you is, if you make a commitment, especially a serious kind of commitment, like a promise or a vow or an oath, that's a very serious obligation. And unless you're quite certain that you can, in fact, fulfill that, it's better to have never said anything at all. That's been a hard lesson for me to learn. I had to make that mistake several times before I learned that. But all of us do it at least sometimes, and maybe we don't append the I promise or I vow or anything crazy like that, but we can still make verbal commitments or tell someone that we're going to follow up with them or to do something with them, and never follow through with our actions. Well, it may not have been intended as such, but in the end, it becomes a falsehood. In the end, it becomes a lie, and it's treated as such in Scripture, which is why you should be careful when speaking about the future, because you don't know what the future holds, and only God can really speak about the future and say what will or what won't happen. And He is the one that we're trying to emulate, right? We are trying to be like God. And God only speaks what is true. And God has a greater capacity to do so because He has infinite knowledge. He knows what is past. He knows what is future. He knows what every one of us is thinking. He knows how we make our decisions. He doesn't have limitations on His power. So whatever He says, He can certainly accomplish. And He knows what He will follow through with. And these things are just not a problem for God. Well, because we're human and we have limited knowledge, each one of these can be a temptation to us. And the solution is for us to trust in God and trust that things will, if we are honest, will truly turn out well. We lie because there's some part of us that doesn't believe that. There's some part of us that believes it would be better to be dishonest. It would be better to try to change the way things are with our words for whatever reason. And it is only through trust and faith in God that we can overcome that temptation. If you have any need, please come while we stand and sing.